As many of you know, I'm not really one for drama in the sense that I rarely talk about drama in a general sense. And it's even rare that I talk about specific individuals who are at the center of drama. But I think in this particular case, talking about the drama is warranted because it really showcases the fundamental problem with the nature of the online guru slash coach. And if you haven't caught wind of this, then I'll let you know now. I'm talking about none other than the female dating coach, Sadia Khan. Now, if you don't know who she is or has been a very, very prominent dating coach who markets herself as a specialist because she, quote unquote, is a psychologist, right? On top of that, she's a reasonably attractive female, and she's also based in Dubai. Now, I want to say at the outset that she's a bit unique because, as I said, the big difference between her and most of these other guys out there is that she markets herself essentially as an academic and as a professional psychologist, somebody who is qualified to give you therapy and qualified to understand your psychology at the end of the day. Usually, as a rule, most gurus out there operating in the manosphere or manosphere adjacent sectors don't claim to be academics. They don't claim to have qualifications per se. What they usually do, of course, is they puff up their chest and they loudly proclaim to the world that they know. And for whatever reason, lots of people buy into the puffed up chest, confidence man gimmick that they run. Now, in the case of Sadia, she has that too, but it's really an interesting combination of puffing up your chest, although I guess she has an ample chest in her case, and also claiming and proclaiming to the world that you are, in addition to all of this, a qualified psychologist, someone with academic experience, etc., etc. Now, this in itself would not be terribly remarkable were it not for the fact that Sadia Khan, in contrast to the vast majority of the online gurus, has enjoyed enormous prestige and has gone on podcasts that are massive in scope and scale. I'm talking about Diary of a CEO. I'm talking about multiple appearances on Chad Williamson. I'm talking about Soft White Underbelly, and the list goes on and on. She is very well known, and she has managed to secure herself a place within the highest echelons of podcastdom, so to speak. Now, I obviously want to talk more about the problematic nature of the online guru slash coach, but let me give you the skinny, the lowdown of what happened. Sadia Khan, and I'm going to link this video in the low bar, was basically exposed by Abba of Abba and Preach. These are two guys. They run a kind of React channel with a little bit of comedy thrown in here and there. And Abba only came onto this information because somebody else detected that Sadia was using a body filter in one of her videos to make it seem like her curves and her buttocks looked a lot better than it actually did in reality. And so he called it out because this guy is a guy who just does this sort of thing, because that's his shtick, so to speak. But that blew up because other things, messages and voice recordings came to light where she, again, loudly proclaimed to the world that she could, quote unquote, perform fellatio better as a side chick, as a side piece, compared to the fiance of some guy. Now, again, Sadia is a very unique operator in the manosphere or manosphere adjacent area, if you want to call it that, because she markets herself as having unique skills and for not being a side chick. She is the one who is wise. She understands how relationships work for both men and women. She will tell you, she will save you and your relationship. And if you listen to these recordings, and it's all there, you will hear her literally brag about her fellating abilities compared to some other chick who's actually engaged to the guy as a side chick. In addition to that, there are innumerable text chats that have been leaked that reveal her basically to be a side chick for multiple guys, seemingly. And on top of all that, it turns out her academic certificates and qualifications are almost certainly all forgeries, meaning none of them are real. And it's patently obvious if you look at them. The dead giveaway is that none of them have a date signed on them. And if you've ever done an academic degree from a university, whatever the nature, be it bachelor's, master's, or higher, when it's awarded to you, there's a date there. On top of that, it just looks very shady in general. So if you combine all these things, it sounds bad enough. What turns out, the ever so compassionate, qualified therapist slash psychologist, Sadia Khan, in addition to all of these other flaws, and I'm being euphemistic here, obviously, is also just a mean biatch, so to speak. She's a cruel person who loses her temper at the drop of a hat and goes off on people like a maniac, like a madwoman. And so essentially, she's been scamming lots of people. And if all that sounded bad enough, it gets even worse. Because Sadia Khan was charging people close to 8,000 USD. Yes, 8,000 USD. I'm not misspeaking. For her enlightening sessions that would uplift her clients into the realms of the heavens as they find romance and love. 8,000 USD. All of this stuff that she's projected online is an act. She's a thespian. It's a persona. Because in reality, she's a mean, cruel, aggressive person. She's been a side chick. Who knows what her relationship status actually is? Nobody really knows after all the lies. And on top of all of that, she charges people, specifically men, I would argue, because most women are not going to pay for services like that. Or maybe they do. Who knows? 8,000 USD for guru sessions that do absolutely nothing at the end of the day. So, as I said, Sadia Khan is a bit of a unique operator in this sphere because, in contrast to the usual suspects, she claims that her unique insights, and they all claim to have unique insights, obviously, are backed up by academic qualifications and certification, which almost nobody does. And the sad thing about all this is, despite the enormous expose done on her, despite millions of people finding out about her true nature, I'm almost certain that her business will go on and continue unperturbed. Now, I do think that she will no longer have access to these top-of-the-line podcasts such as Chad Williamson, Diary of a CEO, etc., just because word gets around. It's the nature of the internet. And these guys are smooth sailors. They do not like getting involved in dirty stuff. They toe the line. They're very much within the overs and windows as much as possible. And they're not going to accept a bad actor like her because it just tarnishes their brand, essentially. But mark my words, she will return to business with very little damage, if any. Now, if you watch the video, the interview that I've linked, she has tried to wriggle her way out of this. She used every excuse in the book. One excuse she gave, for example, when people were bringing up her less than savory voice recordings and her text posts, which were just very nasty and unpleasant to say the least, was that she was being targeted because she was a woman of color from Pakistan, she's Pakistani, by the way, and a Muslim, which I don't think so. And the funny thing about it was she was talking to Abba, who's Ethiopian himself, so I don't think that was going to fly, at least with him. And it certainly doesn't fly in light of the evidence. And the even worse excuse, I thought, was her claiming that despite her nasty temper, which she acknowledged, she has a terrible temper, a terrible way of dealing with people, that's separate from her work. In fact, she cited the example of a surgeon, which I think is ludicrous because the analogy just doesn't hold. A surgeon who's a complete a-hole, a nasty piece of work, but does really good work on the surgeon's table. Well, again, bad analogy because she's anything but a surgeon. She's so far away from that status. But it doesn't work because psychology and being a psychologist is something different. It's not like you're cutting people open at the mechanical level. You're trying to show understanding, compassion. You're trying to understand the very nuanced difficulties and differences between individuals and people. It's just not the same thing. Now, what is the fundamental problem with her and every online guru life coach? The fundamental problem, as I've stated in previous videos, but it bears repeating, it always bears repeating because I think it is true, I believe it 100% to be true, is that it's not really possible to offer a service to somebody, a payable service, in the form of quote-unquote life advice. Now, life advice, as I'm discussing it now, encompasses things like dating, what you should do in terms of a job, what you should do in terms of your activities, the types of people and friends you should surround yourself with, etc., etc. So basically everything that accounts for the countless variables of general life, right? The problem here is just that. There are countless variables. It's all random. There's a ton, if not metric tons of luck involved in all of this. And so somebody giving you very vague general advice about what you should do with your life and who you should date and how you should act is probably, at the very least, a bad actor, if not outright a con man, or in her case, a con woman. And by now, specifically within the sphere of dating, everyone knows the basics. You should looks max. You should money max, blah, blah, blah. Nothing new. We've known this for a long time. The problem is that these gurus claim to know extra stuff that can help you, but it doesn't. Ask anyone who's been in the game for a while. It comes down to luck and the basic metrics of increasing your looks, as well as your financial status, and just gaining status in general as a man. Now, Sadia also has, in addition to all of this, the advantage that she's a woman. And women who operate within the manosphere have certain opportunities that men don't, because you can always rely on the power of the simp. The simp who won't believe it, the simp who, in the back of his mind, through some sort of divine or diabolical delusion, thinks that maybe, just maybe, he has a shot with her, so he's not going to dismiss her outright and he'll support her. Even if you are incredulous at me claiming that, believe me, such men exist. I've borne witness to such men. I have heard their takes. They absolutely exist, and they are not even necessarily small in number. So you should never, ever take the advice / counsel, payable counsel, of people who are telling you what to do with your life in the most vague general sense, right? Because vague in general is easy. This is very different, obviously, from somebody who's offering you a concrete service. Example, somebody who is a physical therapist. They might have a YouTube channel. They are accredited. They have a website, and they have links. And you could maybe go to his website and say, oh, wow, I'm not too far away from him. I have back problems or leg problems or whatever. I could use a physical therapist. He seems good. That's a payable service backed up by actual credentials that hopefully is going to do something for you. That's very different, as I said, from vague advice about dating and how you should dress and life coaching and all this nonsense. Almost everyone operating in that context online, and specifically on YouTube, is full of fecal matter. It's just BS. There are just too many variables in life to be able to master all of these as a vague, waffling life coach. And I'm counting dating coaches within the context of life coach here. And it doesn't stop just here. There are also concrete services, obviously, I should say this for the record, that are equally wasteful. The fitness scene on YouTube is plagued by this. Fake naturals peddling their supplements and products. At the end of the day, a sucker is born every minute. And as long as such suckers exist, these people will continue in their vulture-like existence, devouring the carrion amongst humanity. And it's just a shame at the end of the day that so many people are incorrigible and still listen to these people. And I'm being very specific. I'm not talking about people on YouTube who just talk about stuff without giving advice. That's what I do. I just talk about stuff. If you like to listen, you're welcome to. If you want to support me, I'm very grateful. But I don't demand anything, and I'm not selling you anything other than my analyses and thoughts if you voluntarily choose to support the channel. That is very different from charging $8,000 to somebody and telling them how they ought to date and what they should do with their lives. It's utterly ridiculous. And Sadia Khan really is probably the worst one of them all because she combines all this stuff. She's female. She uses that to manipulate men. She uses body filters. She's a pathological liar. And she's even admitted that if she were not doing this, she'd end up being a drug dealer because, this is a direct quote, she's lazy. I mean, who is honestly going to buy this stuff from her? Apparently a lot of people still. So if you haven't looked into this, I suggest check out the Abba and Preach video. Although Abba did the heavy lifting, ultimately he did the interview, and it's just very revelatory. You're going to see all the layers of the mask being peeled back, and you will see what's underneath it all. Like I said, never, ever trust a quote-unquote dating coach or life coach online. They are selling you junk, and they don't have good intentions. But as always, thank you for tuning in, and many special thanks to my very generous patrons who voluntarily support me. I love you guys. Without you, this channel simply could not exist. Thank you so much. And if you can engage in the usual YouTube jazz of liking the video, sharing the video, leaving a comment, subbing if you're not yet a sub, it'd be much appreciated. If I'm still alive and hail, I will talk to you then. And until then, may the gods truly watch over you. Bye-bye for now.
If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.